Okay, we'll try this with my mask on. Good morning, I'm Kenny. Mental Health Ministry is thrilled to offer this. These tidbits about working with our children, our grandchildren, our students, whoever it may be, during this bizarre time of life. I asked Jenny to write up a little bio. I should have written her bio. I have lots to say. She and I worked together for years. I won't tell you those stories yet. Here's how she describes herself: daughter, sister, wife, mother, grandmother, aunt, friend, coworker. She didn't say that. Photographer, foodie, nature enthusiast, adventurer, and educator with 29 years of experience as a licensed school psychologist in a large metro area school district. Wow. The Osseo district. So, I know some of you are familiar with that. So she agreed to come today. We gave her a boatload of questions to think about as she prepared her presentation. She wants this, as I understand it, to be low-key. Enter in, ask questions, etc. And Zoomers, maybe Lois will let you in. So, okay, let's welcome Jenny.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you guys for asking me and including me in your mental health ministry forum topics. When Penny asked, and she asked if I would be able to either have some information or have some people that would speak to this topic, I said, well, all I know is from the lens of an educator and from the school system. We have school-based mental health services in our schools. We have school social workers. And then I said I could speak as a school psychologist in regards to what I have witnessed in the last 29 years, and in particular this year as well, in regards to our mental health of our students, and then what we are doing and what we can do to help identify it and what we can do to support our youth as they are struggling, and to help them work through wherever they're at, right? So I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, why would I have anything to offer, right? But like I said, I have the experience in the schools. I also come with some life experiences from my immediate family and my extended family dealing with mental health. And what did that look like, and where are we at today? So as I was preparing, I'm like, okay, I usually prepare for students, and I usually create a classroom environment. So if pre-COVID times, I would have had different things on your tables. I would have had different little fidgets. I would have had different things to demonstrate what it is that I'm speaking about in regards to tools and strategies. I'm going to do my best to kind of demonstrate those and to have conversations about those and to get your input as well.
As close to the microphone as you can.
Okay. This is going to be very, you will see when we get to some topic. I'm a very bodily kinesthetic person and I like to have visuals, and so staying on spot and speaking is going to be a little challenging, but I'm going to do my best. So please let me know if you cannot hear me and if I need to switch anything up. So I did present a PowerPoint. Basically, it's just for me, but to help guide it for you too, but to help guide my conversations. So what I wanted to offer for everybody here was I could go through, I could present the PowerPoint as I had thought, or we could also have a conversation, open dialogue forum, and have questions, and maybe a combination of the two. If you have a question, please ask, because maybe then I'll be able to respond or ask or answer from my knowledge base, and maybe then, or perhaps some of my PowerPoint presentation will answer it as well. I'm not sure. So I'm going to open it up to you, to everybody here and online, virtually. Would you like to, is it like an open dialogue, or would you like to kind of would you like me to start the PowerPoint and then see where that goes? PowerPoint? Okay. All right, we're going to try this. Okay, so share my screen.
Share screen.
Okay. I've got to go here. I've got to the, is that good?
Yeah.
All right. So when I was first thinking about this, mental health, huge topic, huge, so many layers. And for me, what I have learned in the last 29 years as an educator, and then just being a parent for 32 actually, what is the first thing to mental wellness and mental well-being is the acknowledgement and knowing that there's something there. Understanding what triggers are, what some symptoms are, just acknowledging it and being true to oneself. Once we say it, then we can work through it. When we ignore it and try to move away from it, then other things kind of manifest and other things pop up. So it's masking it. And we're not getting down to the root of what it is that we are dealing with. And number one, kids, when we're talking about youth, kids want to do well. They will do the best that they can. Okay? So when they're not exhibiting that, there's a reason for it. And trying to figure out what that reason and dig down what that is. So when we talk about mental health, so many different things, right? So when you talk about mental health, what is some things that pop into your mind first thing? Depression. Anxiety. Suicide. Shame. Excellent. Yep. Schizophrenia. Okay. Trauma. Oh, yes. And that is one of the things we're going to be talking about a lot about today, is the trauma. So when you thinking about, trauma, I'm so glad that you said that, because what we're going to be talking about, a lot of my stuff we're going to be talking about is the pandemics, the trauma of the pandemic right now, and what we're seeing in schools today. ADHD.
But I'm surprised to see that up there.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah.
That's what she was diagnosed with. I never thought there was a mental.
That's in the DSM-5. It's a diagnosis, a mental health it's just a mental health diagnosis. And it's just the way it has to do with our brain. It's our brain chemistry.
The way they work.
Exactly. And and it goes back to that shame. So we're seeing a lot of people when they have diagnosis of certain things that have a brain chemistry, or the way that their brain is, the way their brain is working, and how they are, the overtness and the covert symptoms. If they're kind of have that shame, it's like, no, I don't have a mental health disorder. I'm not mentally ill. It's like, we have to try to kind of like, okay, wait a second. We all are dealing with some type of anxiety. Yes.
I just want to say another thing about my daughter with ADHD. Had a terrible time with her in school.
Oh.
Took her out of a public school and put her in a Catholic school because there wasn't all this, you're a third grader, you're a fourth grader, and so she did very well there. And then she went on to junior high, and we had her tested at the Groves Learning Center up here.
Yep.
And their comment was, if you can get her through high school, she will do very well in life.
Yep.
And let me tell you, that has turned out to be true. She's a wonderful daughter and has done real good work. And,
absolutely.
This is interesting.
Absolutely. And that goes to talk I'm going to hope we're going to touch on that in regards to the acknowledgement and knowing who you are, what works for you, what triggers you, what are the tools that you need, What do you need? What do you need for yourself, and what do you need from others in order to be the best person that you can? So, mental health, there's different characteristics. You can just, there's so many, but in regards to, if you just kind of simplify it, there's the negative thinking and feeling. How do I get rid of that?
You can move right there on the far left, the little tiny.
This right here?
Yeah.
There.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
The wonders of, I said, I use Google, you use Google Meets at work, so Zoom is a new technology thing for me. Okay, so mental health characteristics, it's negative thinking, feeling, mood, and reduced ability to relate to others in generality. So symptoms can be both internal and external, right? So internally, basic, boiling it down, sad, withdrawn, lonely. The external, we're seeing the aggressive, the impulsive, the coercive, the non-compliant. Okay? Now, this can result from a number of different things. Biological, okay? Our temperament, our genetic influences, chemical imbalances in our brain. Individual factors, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today. Coping skills, ways of thinking. Right now, there's a big buzzword, there's the fixed mindset, growth mindset. So it's working on changing that fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And what that means is it's not just one way of thinking. We can be flexible, we can try different things, changing the way we talk to ourselves, or we talk to our students, or our child, our grandchildren, about like the I can, you can, the positive kind of spin on it instead of naming the behavior, like you are always distracted. You are bad. You are mean. Trying to figure out different ways to phrase those. It's like, I see you're struggling. Kind of naming some of those behaviors. Because with the behavior, what you're seeing is a window basically into what they're thinking and feeling. And it's our job, as our role, in a sense, to help guide them to identify that. They can't right now. If you ask them what they are feeling, what they are thinking, or this, how you feeling? Fine. What do you think? Nothing. What'd you do in school? You have to have those guided questions, right? Because their brain, and I'll talk about this too, their brain is still developing. They're not there yet. Their brain is not fully developed until they're age 25 or 26. So we are their prefrontal cortex, so to speak. We are their problem solving, their thinking, their guide to trying to figure out how to work through different situations and situations. So mental health can also do from early life experiences, going back to trauma, loss, abuse. So all of these contribute to different mental health. Life circumstances, significant stress, poverty, and it could be a lot of different things as well. Did I push something?
No, I'm just.
Okay. Pandemic stress. Whoops. When I was talking, what are we seeing in school? There's like 3 types of groups of youth right now. We have group 1, where it's all of us. Everybody has experienced those last 20 months together. Okay, and we're not done.
No.
It's continuing. Our stress and the trauma is continuing. Okay. However, not everybody had the same circumstances to navigate this pandemic. That's where we're seeing some differences. Okay. What contributes to how we navigated the pandemic is our resiliency toolbox, which I'll talk about what that is. Some of our students were their family's frontline workers. So they had to go to work every day on the front line. And so they had a whole other type of stress and trauma that they were dealing with daily. Some of our students had parents that were essential workers, which meant that they had to go to work. They were not home with them during their last, when they were going to school. They weren't there for online learning. The student was the teacher, the parent, and the student, parent, and teacher. Sometimes, and the caregiver. A lot of the times, our older students were also caregivers to their younger students or their siblings. Some of our students experienced families that had unemployment. Some had the ability to work from home. So their parents had the ability to work from home, right? And they were able to create a Zoom work and a Zoom school learning environment for their children. So we had students that had everything that created a classroom at home in their bedrooms or a study. And then we had students that weren't able to get online, didn't have the technology, had to be the parent, the caregiver, a teacher to their younger sibling, and be a student themselves. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Some of our students experience loss, either through illness or death. So that's the group one here. So we have all that. So then we have our students that were already had a diagnosis of a mental health condition. Like they already had diagnosis of ADHD, of anxiety, of depression. Okay? And with that, they also had established strategies already in place. They had therapies maybe they were going to. They had medication regimes that had worked for them and they were on. They were already working with mental health professionals. So then they went from going in person to Zoom. But they already had that established. So we all have everybody's experiencing the stress. Then we had this group of youth that have already a mental health condition, but they already have the toolboxes created already. So they're able to kind of work through that and go forward. Not without bumps in the road, but they had something to fall back on. And now this is the group right now that we're seeing a lot of. It's the youth that did not have a mental health condition prior, but now they're starting to exhibit some of the characteristics, the internal and external characteristics that we talked about. They're starting to be sad, withdrawn, lonely. We're seeing that impulsive, the non-compliance. And this was happening during isolation, or we're seeing a lot with the return to school. They don't know how to be a student. They forgot how to be a student. I work in a middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. These students, the last time that they were a student was 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So our 6th graders, the last time they had a full school year was when they were in 3rd grade. Our 8th graders, the last time they had a full school year in person, normal, was when they were in 5th grade. There was so much stunted educational experiences that happened. They don't know they didn't have the opportunities to socialize, to figure out where they were, identify them for a self-identity is huge. And then all of a sudden we're going back into in-person learning and it's like, okay, we're back. And no, we're not back. We're not back. So this is what we're kind of seeing in the schools right now. Does anybody have anything to add here? What you guys think you're seeing, or in home, in caregiving?
So earlier on in the pandemic, I heard some things about for some students with a lot of anxiety, or some students who don't pick up on these things, social cues as the majority, that there was sometimes relief for not having to navigate some of the challenges of being fully in person. And so I'm not questioning any
No.
of what you just said, but I'm someone who's interested in what are also maybe some of the things we've learned in terms of the helpfulness of this. While there's been huge losses and huge setbacks.
Yeah.
But for some children, I heard from middle school parents, for example, my daughter just feels relief.
Yeah.
And that may have gone away after
No.
6 months or.
Can you repeat that for the people?
Yes, sorry. So there are students that when the beginning of pandemic, that anxiety and navigating social situations, it was a huge relief for them. And that is spot on. That, as well as some of the ADHD, those that have the ADHD brain, where they were super distracted by things in their environment, noises, movement of students, people going in and out, a lot of things coming at them at once, a lot of stimuli in a room. Some of our students thrived being online. And what we were seeing is those students that were able to navigate and had that self-advocacy and had organizational skills and were able to prioritize and do some of the self-management, they're choosing and opting to stay on the virtual path. And school districts are giving that option because they were seeing that, yeah, you know what? We are struggling for a majority of the students, but there is a pocket of educators as well as students that are doing really well with this option. And how to then work through that. And then there's kind of like a catch-22. So now you're learning, that you're able to do really well online, right? And get things done and organized. But then you also want to make sure you're not isolated.
Yeah.
So making sure that you have those opportunities to have those social interactions and connections, because connection is a huge thing that we're seeing, and we know that we need to be connected to one another. And it's one thing to do it across a screen, but to have those opportunities to be able to interact socially with one another or provided with a small group of peers is essential to have that. And that's why we're talking about resiliency toolboxes, knowing what you need in order to provide for your child. It's, you don't have a manual when we have a child. We're trying to figure this out. And as a grandparent, you're seeing it through your lens, and you're trying to guide your child in order to be a parent too. And there's that fine line. Where do I step in? Where do I back off? So what I'd like to do is, I don't even know, where's our time right now?
We are just before 10, so you have until 10:30.
Okay,
You have
perfect.
33 minutes.
Okay, so I will get to that. So what we're seeing in the schools, like you said, some picked up really good skills, and some of us picked up some really bad habits. And those that picked up the really good skills right now, our students are doing really well. Those that opted to come back into the public school system in person instead of staying at home, we are seeing that they are organized. They are more efficient with their time. They know how to prioritize and get things done. They're good at multitasking, and they're really good self-advocates. They know what they are able to then say what they need. First of all, they identify what they need. They know it internally and within their brain and body. They're able to then express it, tell somebody, and then they're able to go forward and do the action plan and then make sure that they have it. So it's those students and those skills, that group, it's like, we gotta embrace them in the public school system as leaders, helping them, keep stepping up and being seen and heard. They're using their voice. Okay. Now, what I had said before, yeah, we're seeing some stunted social emotional skills and interpersonal skills and interactions. And those that did not have the strong, that skill set, that resiliency toolbox initially, that stress response is coming out in so many different ways, which is, typical, it's not unusual. But for elementary, for our little first graders, second graders, you don't really know how to be a student. This is brand new to them. How to enter a school, it'll be a part of a classroom with people. Listen to adults' direction and follow adult direction, staff direction, even when they don't agree with it, So it's that difficulty knowing what's expected behavior. So seeing the unexpected behaviors and expected behaviors and then just kind of reeling them in and remembering as staff that, we're not dealing with just like a second grader, where we have to meet them where they're at. We saw increase in separation, anxiety, and depression in our littles. And that could be, the crying, being just really lonely, not knowing how to ask for a friend at recess or choosing to be by themselves. In secondary, in the middle school and high school, it's more so in the middle school. I think our high schools are, they're working through things, but it's really the middle school. It's really difficulty with time, place, and manner. And what I mean by that is there's a time to do or say something, there's a place to do or say something, and there's a manner in which you do and say something. So those are some of the words that we're using in the schools, when we're redirecting. There's like not calling it out, but then saying, there's a time, place, and manner to do that, or, and then this is not the time, place, or manner. And kind of having that vocabulary and helping them make a connection when I can say or do that and when is the more appropriate, when I shouldn't be doing that. Do you have any questions on that? Does that make sense? For the internal ones, we are seeing an increase in anxiety reintegrating to the school climate. Low self-esteem, we're seeing depression, and just really an overwhelming sense of sadness. And where that's coming from can vary. A lot of it has to do with, I think, that isolation of the last 20 months. Could be a perfect storm of a variety of things. I know, for example, my niece they are a 6th grader. And during these last 20 months, they've gone through the identity thing, trying to figure out, I don't want to be called she, I want to be they. Totally, this was her Zoom. That was, it was a black screen, but when the teacher told her that she needed to have her screen on, this was what, it was that the whole time or under a blanket. Totally within her room or their room, trying to navigate school. And what do you think was on the top of it? Was math and language and social studies? Was that on the top of her priority list? Absolutely not. No. So they've lost, some educational experiences. They have a good, cognitive ability to be able to regain those and a loving and supporting family. So this is just an example of what Frankie went through. So they had that. They're in Minneapolis at Barton, and that was a K-8 school, and Barton closed as a K-8. So everybody was distributed through to other middle schools and elementaries. So Frankie got placed at St. Anthony, I believe. First week of school was 3 days. Frankie had a sore throat and a cough. Well, can't go to school because they're gonna be sent home. So COVID test, negative. So this is their norm now. If I'm not feeling good, I have to go get a COVID test in order to go back to school. So, well, at least in the beginning here. So COVID test, wait for results, still negative. Then all that internal sadness, anxiety, all of a sudden now we're having psychosomatic symptoms, stomach ache, headache, which she probably really had a stomach ache and a headache. And that was driven by the anxiety and that anticipation of not wanting to be with people. They weren't vaccinated yet. Her family was very, very, my mom's sister is immune compromised. So she had that worry on top of, and she's, they're listening to the family, right? They're listening to all of what's going on. So long story, cried, had terrible experience the first 2 days. My sister reached out to me. We found her an amazing charter school here in St. Paul. I think that's called the Northern Lights School or something like that. It's Baldwin West 7th. Small environmental school that they're outside an hour a day, regardless of the weather. This is a child that did not go outside, stayed in her room on her computer. So just turned 12. So Frankie she's not a minority. There's a lot of individuals that had the similar experiences. So
Without the family that could.
Without the family support, exactly. Or the identifying and listening. My sister sistened to what her daughter was telling her. It was so hard for her. My sister had a rough couple weeks of school. Luckily, my sister is one of those, has the ability to work from home. So she was listening to, she has 3 kids and they all are on different mental health stuff right now. Frankie is 6th grade. Gus is freshman. He's a 9th grader. And Finn is a junior. So they all have these different things that they're dealing with. So, but the thing is, we were able to hear the behavior was telling them something. They needed to figure out what it was that was going on. And if you ask them, how are you feeling? What's going on? I don't know. I'm just sad. They're not identifying that they are nervous or they have fear or that they're overwhelmed or frustrated. They don't have that vocabulary. Yeah, they might know the words, but they really aren't making the connection to what that means. So it's our role as a parent, grandparent, caregiver, educator to help guide them. Well, okay, I'm feeling sad. Oh, I understand you're feeling sad. I can tell you're sad in describing what you're seeing. You're going into your room more often. You're closing the door or you're putting your hood up. Can you tell me a little more about that? What is it that you're thinking? How's your body feeling? Have them describe the physical stuff that's going on in their body, the thoughts that they're thinking. How's their breathing? How are they sleeping? So kind of listening and guiding them with those questions of trying to help them identify what it is that they are thinking and feeling and doing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that the teachers of today are getting the training about these problems? I never thought my daughter got to train the teachers. I can think of 1 or 2 that saved her to get her along with us, to get her through high school. But I'm just wondering if in these years, she's 53 years old.
Right. I can tell you from 53 years ago, yes, they've gone leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
But our teachers have the training in order to address and work through and identify what they're seeing in the classroom? Not enough. What I do know is they have social workers And they had an increase in social workers and an increase in counselors this year in all the schools in Minnesota. Thank you. We need more.
Yeah.
We also have mental health, school-based mental health support in our schools. They, I gotta tell you, are booked. They are getting referral after referral after referral this year. And they can only take so many.
Yep.
Yes,
Just curious about the counselors and mental health
Yeah.
situation. So I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember hearing, a couple few years ago that Minnesota was actually not good among, in terms of per student
Oh,
mental
right.
health support professionals in schools compared to other states.
yes.
So where does that stand at this point then?
Well, we're,
That a little bit on the.
so the question we had was in relation to the number of counselors per student capita in Minnesota, and where are we at with that? And that Minnesota is not high on the list on that. I do not know the exact number of students per counselor right now. All I know is our counselors are super overwhelmed and they can tell you the number themselves. Where we are with the new support in regards to having more counseling services in today versus last year, it's a little bump, but not enough. At least though, in our elementaries, we have a counselor. I think the counselors are there every day for the majority of the schools that have the population. I know our middle schools and high schools are just, when you get to that level, it's like 1 to 1,200 or something, it's crazy. So, maybe it's not 1,200, but it's big. So in our middle school, we have a very large middle school and we have 3 counselors, 1 per grade level, and each grade level is probably about 600 students. And they are working their tails off. With the support of everybody that's, that they have student services supporting them, but it's not enough. So what they're getting in regards to educational training when they're coming in as a new teacher, I think they're getting it touched on. But what they do, what I have noticed is that teachers are really good at identifying and knowing when a student is struggling, and they'll reach out to the resources that are in their building, be it the counselor, social worker, or the special ed staff or intervention staff. So since I'm a school psychologist, I'm under the special ed umbrella. However, for a majority of my career, except for the last probably 5, I've been in the middle school. I've had the luxury of being able to be a part of the general population as well. Just the way things had working and teaching social emotional learning and getting into classrooms and doing lessons alongside counselors or in addition to counselors. So I could help build that proactive work with classrooms and teachers so that they can help identify and create strategies and tools for our learners that are not simply sit down at your desk, do what I'm told. This is reading and that kind of thing. So, there's so many topics I could talk about.
Yeah, the other thing is, I think that we as a congregation, as people, we need to be, nobody knows how long it takes to bring a kid around.
Yeah.
And so, I was in a program where they thought in 6 weeks I was going to have them ready to be, normal. And, we never did get some of them normal, or I don't even know what normal is. But it's just incredible. And we need to talk to our people at the legislature and these people who talk about not needing anything but academia. I want to just choke them.
Yeah. So the comment was in regards to it takes a long time in order for a child to, once a child is struggling, to get them to a point of quote unquote normal. And what I do, I don't even know if I know I make a difference, but I don't know, I don't necessarily see it.
Yeah.
Because I plant the seed and I give them the tools or the strategies, and then they go on to the next level, and then they continue on. And luckily I've been able to be an educator for a long enough time that I've had students reach back out to let me know. And it's always at that time when you're thinking, do I really want to do this job? Am I making a difference or questioning your own abilities? That's when that student comes back and you get a little email or a card or a text or a phone call and say, hey, I was thinking about you. I wanted to let you know this is what I'm doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought you'd be doing that. I'm like, oh, that warms my heart. So it's those little reaching out and that connectedness again that is so important, and to instill in our kids that it's okay and to reach out and to ask for help, and then to let those that you know that have helped you just be a little piece of kindness, right? What we're seeing in the middle school in regards to the external is something I've never seen before. It's a blatant disrespect to our peers and to authority figures. I mean, they're skipping classes, they're having outbursts, failing classes, total increase in deviant behavior. Obviously we kind of get where it's coming from, but we're in the middle of this now. We're trying to navigate this and be proactive and reactive at the same time. And so it's challenging, but there's a little glimmer of hope. On Friday, we got an email from our school secretary. A teacher had dropped off a note that a student had given to them, and they wanted it to be shared to the staff. Dear teachers and admin at Maple Grove Middle School, I'm sorry for how bad this year has been. I know how bad COVID has been, but the least we as students could do is be respectful and nice, and we are doing the exact opposite of that. All I want to say is thank you for continuing to teach us through this crazy past 2 years. Also, I'm very sorry for what some other kids are doing and saying. I hope they have an amazing day. That was one of those times. Our staff needed that. So what this is telling me is that our students are seen. And those that have that resiliency toolbox and those skill sets, and even those that maybe are just starting to put it together, they're starting to say, you know what, enough's enough, listen. We need to make a difference here. And they're seeing that the staff are we're doing our best. Our parents, we're doing our best. And so there's a glimmer of hope. But the students are going to help guide us of what they need. And this opened up really good conversations. We got this like at 1 o'clock on Friday. Our school's done at 2:20. But that last hour of the day, many of the teachers kind of, you know what, our lesson plans changed a little bit today. So we're going to have a conversation. Yeah.
Well, I'm a school social worker, and I was going to say, in response to what the students are showing you, this is an amazing, resilient student, but the students are showing, it's clear with all the dysregulation and that sort of thing, they're showing you that they need regulation first and foremost. And what are we doing as adults to try to attend to that is kind of the key to being able, like you said at the start, students do well if they can.
Right.
Well, they're showing us they can at this point. So, but what are we doing as adults? Are we just plowing forward with the academics and just saying, hey, social emotional skills don't really matter at this point? They've been through a traumatic experience.
Absolutely.
The pandemic has allowed them to feel like they are dysregulated. And then we shove electronics on them as a way to be able to connect with other people, and that's more dysregulating.
Yes.
And so I think the key is to allow teachers and staff the permission to pull back on the cognitive and academic part and attend to the needs of the students, what they're showing.
So just repeat it.
Absolutely. Yeah, what the comment was in regards to, our students are showing dysregulation.
She's repeating what he said.
And
She's repeating what he said.
for the Zoom.
For our Zoom people, they can't hear that across.
So basically, our students are showing dysregulation. And what are we as staff doing and adults doing to show and model what regulation is and how to respond to that? And we need to have permission in order to pull back on the academics in our academia lesson plan and then touch on social emotional learning. And I do know that that is being done more and more in the classrooms, and it's being incorporated into their lessons. And I wanted to talk about mindfulness, and also a lot of our classrooms are set up in a very mindful environment. Some of our teachers are really, really strong on that. Others are super willing to help and figure out how do I make my classroom like a trauma-informed environment. We've all experienced trauma. So what do we need in order to make it look and create a environment conducive? So I'm gonna just kind of skip to kind of the mindfulness. One thing we can do is fuel our brain and body. I cannot say enough about this. There is a huge connection between our brain, our body, and our emotions. Water. We need to encourage our students and model drinking water. Our brain is 75% water. When it's dehydrated, that's when you start feeling the headaches. That's too late. Have to have it hydrated so that we can have the foundational skills, at least, in order to be able to do what we need to do to work through and be regulated. So drinking lots of water. Yes, it means that you need to go to the bathroom more. Yep, you're gonna get more bathroom passes. That's the way it is.
Right.
But I've noticed that teachers have little bottles of waters in their classroom. Kids bring water bottles and they fill them up. All of our water fountains have the bottle now where you can fill it up. The brain foods, the impact of nutrition on depression and anxiety, on ADHD. I say knowledge is power. When I work with kids, we do lessons on what brain foods are. What is good for your brain? What is good for your body? What should you not have in your brain or in your body that kind of produces, like if you already have a depressed brain in a sense, where you're more prone to depression, what shouldn't I be eating that will continue to or exacerbate the symptoms? I have a book that I bought for myself. This is your brain on food. There's so many resources out there. I'm not promoting anything, but I love to learn about different things. And I love to teach students to learn and think for themselves. So we do lessons on what does it look like if you have ADHD, if you have anxiety, what are some foods that really you should be eating? What are some foods maybe you should stay away from? What are the ingredients, right? What are some top brain foods? And they're surprised to see some of them, and then like, oh, look at this. I used to have, I have a pile of different types of granola bars and energy bars, and I call them brain food bars, in my office. They used to be out there for the kids to come. Now I keep them in my desk, and if they ask, I can give them it, but with COVID, things have changed a bit. But, they look at the labels: nuts, seeds, dark chocolate, coconut, chia seeds, blueberries, all the stuff with antioxidants in there, pomegranates, and then they look like, oh, caffeine. Caffeine's sometimes good. Well, sometimes good. Why is it good? Well, It stimulates some of the brain activity, blah, blah, blah. So they then look and figure out why it's good for them. So when they have that knowledge, then they know what, they're more apt to maybe engage or to advocate. Hey, can I have this snack? Or can we try to make this for dinner? You know, life skills, helping them make stuff. And exercise and movement. It is so important in school and in life. But just to get them going, having movement breaks. Teachers have scheduled movement breaks. They have little different types of movement breaks before a test. Where we have a room called calming room in our school where people can come and do little sensory breaks and do some things to kind of get them regulated and reset. But movement, you have sharper memory and thinking, you have a higher self-esteem, you sleep better, stronger resiliency, and boost your immune system. I mean, we know this, but it's so, I find it very powerful when we have our children and our students, our youth, find this out too. Help them figure out why is this good. We tell them, you gotta get up and move, gotta go outside. Why? It's good for you. Why is that? Fresh air. Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so, kind of give them some ownership of it. Like, what can you do in order to get out there? So, now it's just a picture I took. Okay, mindfulness. Okay, so this is what we can do, and this is what the teachers are trying to do in their classrooms, and this is what we can do in our homes, is create a conducive environment to practice and encourage mindfulness. This will help with the regulation. Like what we're talking about, we need to be in a good mindset, and we need to be in a good space before we're able to actually learn. In order to get to that, I skipped over the brain, but in order to get to the prefrontal cortex, where we're problem solving and learning and our executive functioning is, we have to get bypast our amygdala and our hippocampus. And our amygdala is the very little, tiny little thing, it's our emotions. And that's where we have the fight, flight, and freeze. And that's where a lot of our kids are, in that fight, flight, and freeze. The hippocampus has our memory. And it's attached right next to that amygdala. So when we're in a fight, flight, and freeze, we cannot access our memory. It gets hijacked by that fight, flight, or freeze response, the trauma response. When we can settle that down, we can get that amygdala to kind of just be chill. Then we can access that memory part, what we've learned, which then can open the pathway to what we can think, problem solve, and then get into our long-term memory. I do a lesson in units on Know Your Brain. I think I should have been a neuroscience or something, neuropsych or something. I love just the impact of how the brain works and how that's important. But it's those, to boil it down to those three simple things: the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. We've got to get that amygdala regulated. And one way to do it is create a mindful environment. And you've heard the buzzword mindfulness, right? Yeah, it's out there. Pay full attention to something. Slow down to really notice what you're doing. Being mindful is the opposite of rushing and multitasking. Simple thing you can do at dinner: mindful tasting, mindful eating. What do you smell? What do you see? What do you smell? Take a bite. Just let it sit there. What sensations do you feel in your mouth? When you chew it, what do you hear? What do you feel as a texture? There's all these things that's out there. You could do a mindful activity with like a Dove chocolate, because it sits there and then it starts to melt. And then kids love chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate? And do dark chocolate, then you got your brain food and your mindful activity all in one. So one thing we can do for our environment is to declutter it. Because when our environment is lots of stuff around it, that creates mental confusion for ourselves. So when we have a nice, simple, decluttered space, it doesn't have to be your whole house. Just have maybe a space or a spot in their, maybe not their room, but maybe a space that they could go, that a student or a child could go to, or you can go retreat to, just to kind of have a decompression. That helps. So, mindfulness tools. This is just a sampling, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of other ones that you could add to it. But lighting, the big one. Having soft lighting. I was noticing on the way in here today, I live in White Bear Lake, and when I got it, I saw that it was gray. But then there was just this little peak of blue.
Mhm.
And as I was driving just by the lake, all of a sudden, the sun popped out. And it was just, I see the sunrise, and the sun was hitting my face. Now, I am a very nature person. So sun is huge for me. I love seeing the sun. But the lighting, that just lifted it lifted me up and also lessened the anxiety of what my unknown, what I was getting myself into this morning. You know, so it was just helpful. I was seeing the lake and the nature. Nature's huge. Just pictures of nature, getting outside, taking a walk, having a plant in a space. Those are all things that you can help produce and promote mindfulness. Essential oils. I have this little brain aid that I kind of put on my map, so it kind of helps me kind of think clearly and focus. Sometimes diffusers, and it depends on what you need. You need to relax. You need to be energized. You need to be heightened a little bit. All the different essential oils have a different kind of connection in our brain that promote a different type of response. Again, knowledge is power. Trying to figure out what works for you. But what works for you might not work for me. So it's individual because our brains are all different and we're all wired differently. So when I do it with students, I say, well, how does that make you feel? That makes, I love sour. Like when we do tasting. I love sour. This takes it into some, like, I cannot stand that sour lemon. But there are some, like I've noticed that sometimes the ADHD brain will take a lemon and just eat it and love it. And it calms them down. And they're just focused. Where there's some others that can take a lemon and they're like, whoa, not for me. And it really heightens them. It's fascinating. Where are we on?
You're at 10:30.
Okay, because I gotta wrap up. You guys, I'm sorry it was so kind of blah, 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 but I could talk about this stuff, and obviously I do a lot of lessons around this, so there was a lot to just try to talk about in 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
But I hope there was a little glimmer. Thank you so much for listening to me babble. I'd rather have had a conversation, but I'm hoping that something, we got a little tidbit of something. Thank you.